Hello YouTube! Well, it's been a long time in coming, I know, but after much soul searching, after wandering very, very long and very far in the dark and nasty regions where nobody goes, I have brought myself to the point where I can actually sit down and perhaps answer some of the questions I got. Do you remember that? Do you remember the Q&A video I put up like yonks ago? I think it was several months ago, where I said, oh yeah, I'll leave the questions open until Friday or something like that. Yeah, well, that Friday was mercifully without specification. Because I haven't felt inclined to sit down and answer any questions at all. Certainly not in an entertaining manner. So I'm doing it this evening, you lucky, lucky people. So, to kick things off, Logan Vance asks, your fave Transformer that you own? That's a really tricky one to answer, actually, because I like different Transformers for different reasons. You know, I would like the mechanics in the transformation of one, I would like this particular mode of another, I would like the character of this one, but if you put a gun to my head and forced me to answer that question, then I think I would have to go with this guy. This is Beast Wars 2 or Beast Wars Neo Magmatron. I just adore this toy. I love everything about it. I love the fact that it's formed from 3 separate dinosaurs. I love the fact that the bot mode is so quirky and strange. I love the character. He is just fabulous. To me, this is everything that why Transformers are so engaging and so enticing. I think he is. I mean, he competes with others. Don't get me wrong. Cryotech is up there as well, as is Transmetal 2 Black Arachnia. Who else? Oh, Beast Wars 2 Galvatron is also up there. All Beast Wars toys, you will notice. Beast Wars and the Beast era in general are really my thing. I love the bots from this era. But if, yeah, put a gun to my head, it would be Beast Wars Magmatron. Definitely. Loves him. Transformatic James asks, if you could sit down and have an at length or in-depth conversation with anyone over the course of human history, who would it be? Good question. I think I may have answered one like this in my last Q&A video, actually. I think I answered last time someone like the Marquis de Sade, or someone to that effect, someone who is really quite profane and perverse and interesting. The Marquis de Sade I would like to sit down and speak with, because I would like to know just how much of his reputation and just how much of the utmost perversity that occurs in his books is heartfelt, and how much of it has been lived, and how much of it is just very clever myth-making. The thing with the Marquis de Sade is, it's fairly evident when you start reading his work that he attempts deliberately to shock his audience, to sort of jar them out of a sense of ennui and of stagnation. He's trying to break through their parameters of personality and of their presumptions of morality and of class and structure, using just absolute and unbridled perversity. I'm telling you, read Philosophy in the Boudoir. The stuff in there that in no modern book would get away with printing it. It's so graphic and so shocking and so brilliant. I'd also like to know just how much of the philosophies and the perspectives he espouses again, I want to know how much of them are genuine and how much he's just pissing about, how much he is just toying with the aristocracy and the cognoscenti of the period, because a lot of what he says seems to be in irony. It's difficult to communicate in text irony. As any YouTube commenter will know, it's difficult to communicate irony or sarcasm or anything like that. So yeah, I'd love to know how much of him on the page is the man. So yeah, the Marquis de Sade would be one. Hitler would definitely be one. I would want to know where his perspectives came from, because they're so far removed from anything. I can't. It's one of those mindsets that I find very difficult to put myself into cognitively. And I would just love to know what he felt about them, or how he would articulate them within the parameters of a conversation. What would he use to justify those positions, and would he have any insight into them? Would he understand the consequences of what he was doing? Would he be able to demonstrate empathy or anything to that effect? I would just be fascinated by that. Jack the Ripper. I would like to sit down and have a conversation with Jack the Ripper. First of all, I would like to know what the man looked like. I get the impression that he was probably very banal. I don't know why. That's just an intuition on my part. But again, it's a mindset I don't understand, and it's entirely possible. I mean, serial killers generally, particularly those who focus on women, tend to have some awful, crippling problems. They tend to be very neurotic, intellectually subnormal as well. Serial killers, by and large, it's not universally true. I mean, the likes of Zodiac are the exceptions that prove the rule. Zodiac was evidently very clever, very, very clever, in fact, phenomenally, abnormally clever, hence why they never caught him. But Jack the Ripper was almost certainly intellectually subnormal. But I would just like to know, I would like to know what the myth behind the man is. I mean, the man himself has become so mythologized with bullshit. There's so many bullshit theories out there. I mean, the notion that he was educated, or that he had some training as a butcher or as a surgeon, it's nonsense. If you actually look at the notes and the actual facts of the matter, it's utter garbage. But yeah, again, it's pure morbid curiosity is also part of it. So there you go. Billy Edwards asks, following on from James, are there any people you would... this is a good one. Are there any people you would absolutely not want to talk to? Not for any negative reasons, but to avoid losing the mystery that surrounds them. Very excellent question, actually. I had to sit and think about this one for a time, but really, no. There isn't anyone, really, because although, like all human beings, I can create idols of other human beings, I am imaginative and empathetic enough to realise that human beings are complex, multifaceted entities. I mean, Blake is a really good example here. I adore Blake's work. I think that Blake is, via his poetry, a metaphysician par excellence. I think his work is insightful and moving and absolutely engaging, absolutely superb. But I'm well aware of the fact that, like any other human being, he sat and shat on a pot at various points. He sat and had crippling constipation and got ratty with other people as a result of it. He cursed and got in a bad mood because he stubbed his toe at some point. I am absolutely aware that even the most insightful, the most seemingly emotionally and intellectually developed of us is still prone to various pettinesses and prejudices and everything that makes human beings human beings. None of us are cartoon characters. I am intimately aware of that fact. Clive Barker's another good example. I fucking adore Barker's work. I adore it. I really find it difficult to find anyone that surpasses it. For me, it speaks to me on a very, very intimate level in terms of its aesthetics, its philosophy, just the pure, unadulterated imagination of it. But I know for a fact that the man is a man, in that he has his contradictions and his complexities and his pettinesses just like anyone else, and I know for a fact we would disagree massively on so many things. He's a man. He's probably one of the only living human beings I admire supremely. I admire greatly because of his work, but I already know that there are things that we disagree on, because he's a theist, for one thing. He holds to a notion of the divine which is external from himself, and which moves through all things. It's not like a religiously prescribed notion of divinity. It's very complicated and something that he has determined for himself based on experience and cogitation. I mean, that just makes the man all the more interesting for me. The fact that we do disagree on something so fundamental, I find that really interesting. And I find the notion of God and of divinity that he holds to be interesting and beautiful, even though I don't agree with it. So yeah, no, there's not really anyone. I don't idolize anyone to that degree. The people I admire. I know why I admire them. It's because of what they produce, by and large. It's not because of any notion of what they can provide as human beings, really, or as any notion that I have of meeting them or of being buddies with them or anything. No, that doesn't interest me. You'll notice this as auto assembly. Anyone who goes to auto assembly will notice this. I'm not really bothered about the special guests or whatever. I'm not bothered about them as special guests. I'm not bothered about them as voice actors or artists or whatever. I find them interesting if they're interesting human beings, and that's it. I mean, Scott McNeil last year was really fun. Really fun. Gorgeous as well. Beautiful, beautiful man. And loads of fun. He was just really, really engaging. As was Greg Berger in 2009. And I admire them because of that fact. Because they had a lot of time for their fans. And they were tireless in it. I thought that was really admirable. But just because they happened to voice a Transformer in the 1980s or in Beast Wars or whatever really doesn't do it for me. I can appreciate the voice work but separate it from the human being. So that's that. Where are we? Adam White. Here's another good one. If you were able to install any religion as the dominant belief in England, what would it be? Are we doomed to believe in anything higher than ourselves? I wouldn't, is the easy answer to that one. I just wouldn't bother doing that. It's against every principle, every belief that I've come to foster or hold to impose or prescribe ideology. I want the death of ideology. That's what I'm looking forward to. The decay, the decline, the abandonment of ideology, and prescribed ideology in particular. Ideology that derives from institutions or from authorities. I'm looking forward to its dissolution, to the point where we as human beings, as a species, as a cult, as cultures, as individuals can move past the need for them. If I had no choice, if I had to enshrine a particular religion, then if it had to be a pre-established one, like a religion of tradition, then it would probably be one of the Buddhist religions or one of the Eastern religions, which tend to remove authority. What they tend to do is enshrine the notion that every human being has to find their own path to divinity or to this particular state, or they have to develop their own way, which I absolutely agree with. I think that's the only thing worth enshrining, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if I had my way, I'd remove all of the other abstruse bullshit that goes with it and just have that. There would just be one tenet. If I could enshrine my own religion, it would be a religion of one tenet, and that is, find thine own way. That's it. There'd be nothing else. No dogmas, no tenets, nothing. Nothing else. It would just be find thine own way. That's what I'd enshrine. Jeff, lovely Jeff, asks, what do you get satisfaction from? Good one. Really good question, actually. I get satisfaction from so much, I really do. I can find, because of my state of mind, I can get satisfaction from the smallest things. I can sit here with no stimulus in the dark, just listening to the breeze or the wind or the chatter of silence. And there's no such thing as absolute silence. I mean, if you sit in the deadest quiet, you can still hear that sort of seething. It's like an insectile rustle, and you can't unhear it once you've heard it. It's like millions of voices chattering at once. Or maybe that's just me. But I can get satisfaction from anything. I find that just going outside can invigorate and enlighten and cause these incredible explosions of sensation. You know, just having rain hammer down on you, exquisite cold. I love cold and rain so deep that it hurts. I love that. Heat, the same. You know, beautiful sunny days. Cooking, I get a lot of satisfaction from cooking. I love to cook. I love good food, and I love people to enjoy it. I love to cook for people. And what I love is that because I take a lot of time over it, I like to cook well. People enjoy it, and I like giving people enjoyment and satisfaction. I like that. I like giving people things, not in a sort of... There are ways and means of giving gifts, I find. Sometimes gift giving can be very creepy. If there's no particular reason or nuance to the gift giving, it can be very creepy. It can come off as slightly neurotic. But I like to give people things sort of off the cuff, or to buy people drinks or food or whatever. Even though I don't really have that much money, I live on a shoestring, I really do, I don't have much money at all. But I like that. I find I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. The big things that I get satisfaction out of, conversation. Conversation is inordinately sexy. Oh God, isn't it? I mean, that is near number one on list of absolutely essential characteristics in a partner, in a lover. Good conversation, someone who can hold their own in debate and has some notion of the nuance and music of language. I find it difficult to listen to people who don't have any musicality in their voice. That might sound really terrible, but I do. I find it really difficult to listen to people who bark or who slur, who can't... It's not when it's like when it's a genuine deficiency, when it's because of a biological or physical problem. It's when they can't be asked. It's when they can't be asked to enunciate and they expect you to listen to them. It's like the people who send me PMs on YouTube but can't be bothered to you know, they're very furious because they're people who disagree with me profoundly on things and want me to take on their perspectives, but they can't be asked to use sentences or paragraphs or punctuation or whatever. Fuck off. Why should I bother listening to you if you can't be bothered to structure what you're saying, to think about what you're saying? Then why should I listen to you? But I love that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of having conversations, and conversations with me tend to diverge into big subjects. I'm sure Gerard and Ray and any number of others will tell you this. I tend to start blathering about big subjects and picking at the intricacies of things, because that's what I think conversation is for. I'm not interested in having a conversation that just reinforces. I like conversations that go to places and that perhaps lead you to places where you pick at things and consider and find that actually through the process of conversation, it's like the process of thought or meditation. You are discovering things via that process. I love that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. Bots, obviously, get a lot of satisfaction out of the plastic. Actually, it's not just bots. I like toys. I don't know what... I like things that you can play with. I like things that have dynamic and aesthetics and that have mythology behind them. I love that. And that you can infuse with character. I really, really like that. Get a lot of satisfaction out of my bots. So I do. Lot of satisfaction. Comics and media. The media defines my existence. It really does. I can't... the narrative and mythology is air to me. It's more than air. It's blood. I need it. It informs everything about my personality, and I can't do without it. I love it, and I have a very intense, obsessive relationship with literature, with art, with music, and the created thing, the inspiration, that thing which leads human beings to operate in the abstract, and for their metaphorical anatomy to flourish. That is where I get most satisfaction from. Writing is the be-all and end-all. That's the one I've always done. It's the one I've always wanted to do, to write stories. It's my medium. Not my only medium, but it is the medium that is the most readily engaged with for me. I perceive the world in narrative and mythological terms. It's a wonder I'm not religious, really. It's a wonder I'm not religious, because I do see the world in those terms, in mythological and epic terms. But I also know enough of them to regard them for precisely what they are, and that is human constructs. Reflections of humanity. Whether there is any wider significance, some sort of universal or cosmic significance to the mythologies that we create, and there might be, I don't know. I've no idea, but I'd love to find out, and I look forward to it at some point. So yeah, that's what I get satisfaction from. Other people as well. I mean, I'm an isolated individual. Isolation is another thing I get a lot of satisfaction from. I am jealous of my own time. I need it. I need time to myself. Oh God, do I? And I need to be away from people. That's something that any potential partners are going to have to sort of get over as well. I need a lot of alone time. And it's nothing personal, you know. It's just the way it is. I need isolation. I need it. But I do enjoy other people a great deal when I have, pardon me, when I'm around them and when I have contact. So there you go, Jeff. That's what I get satisfaction from. Everything. Rowan? Oh, I've answered that one. Adam Drysdale asks, what fictional characters would you most like to play or voice in either a movie adaptation or a remake? Nice. Who would I like to play or voice? You know who I've always really wanted to play, and I can't do it because, well, I could do it, I suppose, but it would be interesting because I'm not old enough, really. Prospero. I've always wanted to play Prospero in The Tempest. I love that character. I think he's mental. He's crazy, and he's a sorcerer, and he's old and slightly schizophrenic. I love Prospero. I'd love to play him. Another Shakespearean character is Iago. Oh, Iago. Oh, yes. Or any Iago-like character. Those characters who are just deliciously malevolent and have no reason for it. They're like avatars of malevolence. They're like Lucifer. They're elemental evil. I love that. Iago I would love to play. And the Master in Doctor Who is Iago. There's nothing else to him. He is Iago in science fiction, and I would love to play him. I would relish playing the Master. Oh, who in the world would you have killed if you could? No one. I don't subscribe to any human being's right to murder another. No, I actually wouldn't murder anyone. Problematic as some human beings are, I actually don't think it actually solves anything. The problems subsist. The cultural problems that lead to human evil, the structures of power and of authority and of imposition, the presumptions, the culturally entrenched presumptions still subsist no matter what you do, no matter which individual human beings you kill. It's kind of like it's like excising a pimple to get rid of a cancer. You know, it doesn't mean anything. So no one is the answer to that question. Is it true that your beard conceals a hidden third eye? It's not, actually. As you can see, my beard itself is transient. It's ephemeral. It comes and it goes. I'm not quite sure where it goes. I have suspicions, considering what turns up in it, that it is extra-dimensional. there are times when it has come back with Shoggoths in it, and that's an absolute pain in the arse. If you ever tried to clear a fucking Shoggoth out of facial hair, it's unbelievable. But no, that's just a myth. It's a commonly held one. I know that there are lots of cults around the world that believe this, and actually there are cults dedicated to that very image, and entire mythologies are crewed around it. It's bizarre. It's absolutely not true, I assure you. Have you ever met any of your heroes or major influences? Yeah, I met Terry Pratchett once. That was nice. At a book signing. He's a very nice man. He's a very, very pleasant man indeed. Very witty. The one I want to meet I haven't met, and that's... Oh, I also met Doug Jones. I met Doug Jones, the actor who plays Pan and the Pale Man in Pan's Labyrinth. He is lovely. Really lovely guy. I met him at a memorabilia show, and I spent a long time talking to him. Really, really pleasant chap. The one I want to meet, obviously, is Clive Barker. It's not likely. The last time he was here, I missed it. I curse myself, but I missed it. I would love to meet Clive. Possibly one of the only human beings who can make me go a little bit starstruck. I'm not sure. I'll have to wait and see. And I want to resist the urge to just sort of hug him, which I might do anyway. Oh well. But no, most of my major influences are dead, so probably no chance of meeting them. Would you rather have household name status as a famous writer or be an underground obscurity? Obscurity? What the fuck was that? Obscurity, love. Obscurity. Beloved by the geekiest cognoscenti. The latter. I think if my work ever becomes popular, then it's doing either it's doing something dreadfully wrong or something terribly right is happening in culture. As it currently stands, there are certain portions of the public that if they like what I write, I'm doing something wrong. It's the portion who watch EastEnders regularly and who think that the people who win Have I Got Pop Idol or whatever the fuck it's called, Britain's Got Wankers, whatever it's called, have talent, are actually talented, instead of just being poor copies of other people, other actually talented people. You know, it's that kind of people. If my work appeals to them, then I'm doing something wrong. If you were a household appliance, what would you be? A bread saw. Definitely, I'd be a bread saw. I don't know why. I just like them. I particularly like the ones, they're called kitchen devils. I used to get them in the 1980s. Fantastic blades. They were serrated down one end and had two prongs at the end. And they are the best kitchen knives. You can use them to cut anything. We've had one since the 1980s. Actually, my parents have got one that's older than me. It's been around for a long, long time. So yeah, I'd be one of those. Oh, and how do you plan to spend the impending apocalypse? Well, I spent it how I spend the vast majority of my non-working days, and that is working, funnily enough. Sat at my keyboard, writing. That's how I spent that. Now, if you're referring to the apocalypse that I'm going to be initiating with my partner in crime, Wolfgang 1, aka Gerard Galvin Barry, well, you'll have to wait and see for that, won't you? Needless to say, it will bring changes. Oh yes, there will be changes. Graham asks, sweeps or seekers? Sweeps. Love the sweeps. Love Scourge, actually. So, yeah. Transformatic James asks once again, number one, if Crayola approached you right now and said, we want you to make the next colour crayon to add to the box, what colour would it be? It would be venereal purple, I think. If you could make one food disappear off the face of the planet, what would it be? Easy. Okra. ladyfingers. I fucking hate that stuff. I hate it with a passion. There's not many foods I dislike. I will eat almost anything. Anything you can imagine if it's cooked in a particular way. And I'll try anything, but I've never had okra that's been good. I've never had it and enjoyed it. It's horrible. You cook it and it turns to slime. It is like snot. It is vegetable snot. It's and even if you cook it where the stuff comes out, where it's not just goop, it's like sponge. Sponge or snot. That's what you get with okra. So yeah, I would have okra disappear from our menus because it's horrible. Graham Brown asks, if you had one free kill, would it be Justin Bieber or Osama bin Laden? Oh well, it's a bit redundant now, isn't it? It tells you how long ago I posted this fucking video, doesn't it? Again, wouldn't refer to previous question. John Rasmussen asks, how do you express love toward others, i.e. good friends and people whom you are close to, those that you would call family? I express love in a variety of different ways. I don't plan or think about these things. I'm very spontaneous when it comes to this sort of thing. Hugs are a big one. I hug everyone, as you well know, John, and as everyone who goes to Auto Assembly knows, I hug everyone. I'm a huggy and quite tactile kind of guy, and there's a trick to that. There's a trick to being tactile without being invasive, being aware of other people's personal space, whilst at the same time having a certain degree of physical intimacy. That's the way I go. But I do lots of things, depending on the kind of love being expressed. I mean, I will cook for people, and I will make them things. I will write poetry, I'll write things for them, and I will talk to them, by and large. That's the biggest thing. I will talk and talk and talk at length about the deepest intimacies and the intricacies of relationships and the dynamics of them. Because it fascinates me. It really interests me, and none are more interesting than one's own. Nabil Toya, my man. If I could hug you, I would, but you're too far away, which is a shame. I've got to come over there, or you've got to come over here at some point, just so I can hug you. Then you can go again. Doesn't matter. Your thoughts on the death of the author concept? It's bunk. Death of the author concept is it's based on an essay from 1967 by a chap called Roland Barthes, and it's tied up with the notion of the death of authorial intention. Now, there is something to say for this concept. It's not something to disregard entirely. It's just the way Barthes markets it that's the problem. Barthes suggests that created works can be shorn of their context somehow, that the author can somehow consciously remove the influences of their own intentions, their agendas, their prejudices, their psychological makeup, which is, as any person who writes or creates anything will tell you, is bullshit. You can't do that. Everything you create is an intimate reflection of you. Everything, every character, every world, every place, environment, interaction, it's something inside, it's something inside you. It's something that you are attempting to thresh out in your own mind or within the arena of your own emotions and imagination. You can't do it. That said, or intention, specific authorial intention or agenda doesn't count for much, because meaning is derived on that counterpoint between text or object and reader. It occurs here in this nebulous space, and readers or observers or consumers or whatever you want to call them bring their own prejudices and intentions and contexts to the work, and they will derive from it a great swathe of different things that the author or the creator of the thing never intended or never even conceived of. They will reveal significances that were never there or are never intended to be there, but which this person perceives. So it's a complicated matter, really. But as for the notion of removing authorial context, it's not possible. It's absurdist. Where are we? Michael O'Sullivan, Dinosaur Guy, asks me, what would you say was your biggest revelation in the last 3 years, and has it affected your life to a minor or major degree? The biggest revelation I've had in the last 3 years is that I actually have a domestic capacity. That was a shock. It's a shock to realise that you can interact with someone on a domestic level and really enjoy it. Because I don't generally. I tend to regard domesticity as a pain in the arse, apart from cooking. Love cooking. But it's not something that ever... It always seemed to me to be frippery or distraction. But no, I can enjoy it. I can actually appreciate the minutiae of it. And that is a really big surprise. It's a surprise to me. It also surprised me very, very much that YouTube has helped a great deal with this, that I can enthuse people so much, that I can communicate so well with people. That's a surprise, because I've always had this preconception of myself as slightly isolated and awkward and academic, which is not true. I mean, Auto Assembly, the first one in 2009, or the first one that really changed the dynamic of it, that blew all those preconceptions out of the water, and since then things have changed a great deal. I never realised that I can do that I can interact with a great swathe of people and engage them to such a degree, and that's been an epiphany, that's been enlightening. That I don't belong in the world isn't really an epiphany, but that it's something I realised when I was a child. I realised very, very early that I don't engage with what people call reality in the way that people either want me to, or the way that people seem to preconceive that I should. And that has escalated every year since my first conscious thought, really, but that has been hammering into me. There have been a couple of life lessons over the past 3 years, traumatic things by and large, that have compounded that fact to me, and that I need to find an alternative way into things. I always do, I always have. It's the way I've always operated. And trying to countermand that or deviate from it has always resulted in negative consequences. Always. It's like there's a pre-allotted path, almost. If I were more superstitious, I would call it predestination or fate or something. I know it's not that, but it can feel that way sometimes. I answered the next question in that, actually. Jeffrey Sproul asked, when was your last epiphany? Well, there you go. When was the last time you laughed till you cried, and what was it? Adam White asked that. The last time I laughed until I cried, I was close to it at last Auto Assembly when I was really drunk, and I was sitting with Gerard and Johnny, Dwarf Porn Star, and Johnny was talking about the innate homoeroticism of the He-Man cartoon. I nearly sort of had to tell him to shut up because I couldn't breathe for laughter. There was a period not too long ago where my friend Leo and I, actually it was quite a while ago, I was still at university, god, that sort of snuck up on me, but quite a while ago my friend Leo and I, when we were in a gay bar in Derby, very drunk, and we were talking about bollocks, absolute bollocks, and I fell off the sofa and was sort of rolling around on the floor laughing, not being able to breathe because it was so funny. Billy Edwards asked, if you could have any dream guest attend a future Auto Assembly, who would it be and why? Megatron? That'd be nice. If you could organise it so that Megatron could attend, G1 or Beast Wars, I don't mind. Really, I prefer Beast Wars actually. I'd like to talk to Beast Wars Megatron. I like him. Oh yes. But yeah, that'd be nice. JD, you wee fecker, asks, due to an unforeseen and highly improbable glitch in the fabric of the universe, you have been given the power to bring the soundtrack of one 80s or 90s animated show to official release. Firstly, what is it? And secondly, what are you wearing? Rubs knees. I'm not actually wearing anything. This is, it's hard to describe. It's a synthetic epidermis that will come about in one or more of the futures that may result from this point on. I've been to a lot of them. It's a synthetic epidermis that adapts to your needs or requirements. It shifts depending on what you want, basically. So I'm not wearing anything technically. But if I had the power to bring the soundtrack of one 80s or 90s animated show to official release... good question. I like the soundtrack to Prince Valiant. I think the Prince Valiant cartoon had a really good soundtrack. As did Ghostbusters. It would have to be Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters cartoon had a really good, solid soundtrack. Some really nice rocking beats as well. So it'd be that one. Sammy Sardek. Sammy Skullgrin asked, what do you think of the Legacy of Kain? I think the Legacy of Kain series is a really good example of video games as a narrative medium. It's a great story, a really intricate, beautiful fantasy mythology. I think the world is very beautifully conceived. The characters are great. The voice acting is par excellence. It is some of the best voice acting you will find in any video game. It's just Simon Templeman as Kain is fabulous. Raziel, is it Michael Bell who plays Raziel? Fan-fucking-tastic. Tony J, of course, who is sadly no longer with us, who plays the Elder God, the Wheel of Fate. Just gorgeous, gorgeous voice acting. I think it's brilliant. I love how clever it is. I think that the intricacies of the plot are very clever. The development of the characters is brilliant. I love the fact that it's not moral. The characters are amoral, if anything. They operate outside of any conventional morality. But it's an anti-authority parable, ultimately. It's about railing against the lot that life and fate has given you. And I love that. I think it's fantastic, and I think more of our popular medium should be about that, and they are, increasingly. I mean, if you look at a lot of the games that have come about of late, the narratives are not only very sophisticated, but they are about that very fact. If you look at the Deus Ex series, Bioshock, and so on and so forth, Dragon Age, Baldur's Gate, all of these things, Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy series tends to contain this very notion, the notion of anti-authority, of questioning what presents itself as authority, and I really like that. But Legacy of Kain, the games aren't that great. Funnily enough, the games aren't superior by any stretch. The best one, I think, personally, is Soul Reaver. The first Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain 2, technically. I think that's the best of the games. They dwindle in quality after that to Defiance, which ironically has some of the best story elements, but is the worst of the games. It's a pain in the arse. The fixed camera angles are hideous. It's a nightmare to control, and the combat is awful. But I played it all the way through to the end because the story is just so good. Right then, moving on to the questions that came as a result of my video. Right. Renegade 4Dio Todd asked me, can you comment on the concept and actualization of book burning, particularly as it relates to religious texts? Yes, I can. I think it's asinine in both concept and in actualization. I think it's asinine. I think it serves absolutely nothing. It expresses nothing but tribalistic, meat-headed contempt. If that's what you want to do with your so-called freedom of speech, then fine, go ahead and do it, but don't pretend that it's anything but tribalistic chest beating, and also don't think that it's anything but base vandalism. I have no tolerance and I have no respect for it at all, whether it's an expression of freedom of speech or whatever you want to claim that it is. I think it's nonsense. I think it's utter nonsense, and I think it belittles those who do it, quite frankly. If you really want to rail against a religious text, then the best way to do it is to read it and to analyse it. Or rather, what I should say is, if you want to rail against a particular interpretation and prescription of a religious text, then you read it, analyse it, and convey what you perceive there. The books and the stories themselves, the prescribed behaviours, the tenets and the dogmas, are just that. They're inert. They're utterly inert. Human beings, by and large, decide what they do with them. And the notion of burning them as an expression of contempt is impotent. Utterly impotent. It's the fact that they move people, that they stir people, that should be explored. And I can't conceive of it as anything else but rabble-rousing nonsense. That's what I feel about it. It angers me. It frustrates me, which means that I can't speak about it objectively. It really frustrates me, actually, and I think it so belittles the people who do it. I think it belittles the people who support it, quite frankly. I think it does nothing for whatever cause they think they have. And as for people doing it in my name, or in the name of a particular label or belief system or whatever that I happen to subscribe to, fuck them. Fuck them mightily. They don't speak for me. And I will announce my absolute obstruction to that kind of expression here and now. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how much awesome do you think is contained within the Cthulhu mythos? Funny thing that, the mythos itself is great. I mean, the mythos is fucking awesome. I'd say it's at least an 11. But the writing is cack. Lovecraft is not a good writer. He mechanically is not a good writer. It's something that vexes me about the man, because I actually like reading his work. I enjoy it because it's so bad. I enjoy it because it's so poorly written. You can get things like you can get sentences where he uses 5 adjectives at a time, not just 1 but 5 in description of one thing. It's amazing. Where his sentences have these massive sub-clauses that go on forever, and like pages at a time, whole sentences and paragraphs taken up by these sub-clauses. I kind of like that. They have kitsch value, but the mythos is sublime. It's not only sublime, it's unique. There is very little like Lovecraft other than what Lovecraft inspired, and so many people have sort of adopted the elements of Cthulhu, or just the general redolence and ethos of the Cthulhu mythos for their own mythologies. I think it's quite beautiful, really. It's a really interesting piece of work. I love the notion. I love the way that Lovecraft takes preconceptions, culturally entrenched preconceptions of notions such as gods and metaphysics and science and evolution, and turns them on their heads. He says that all of these things could coexist in reality. All of them could coexist. There can be metaphysics, there can be magic, there can be occultism, there can be gods and demons and all sorts of things, but there can also be science and evolution, but they aren't what you think they are. They aren't exclusively what human beings preconceive them to be. The universe is so vast and so multifaceted, and so far beyond the limited range of perceptions and senses that we human beings have been given, and it isn't necessarily friendly. I love that about the Cthulhu mythos. It's total nihilism. Total nihilism. There's no hope. for humanity, or for sentience, or for art, or for beauty, or anything in the Cthulhu mythos. There's just dread and entropy and the gradual grinding down to perpetual torment. It's brilliant. Which Beast Wars figures do you think are the worst? Is there a particular Beast Wars figure that you know isn't very good but still love, and why? Good question. The worst Beast Wars figure is undoubtedly the Silver Bolt from the Magnaboss Combiner. That is a fucking insult to Transformers. It stands right up there with the Latter Day Pretenders from G1. It just is abysmal. I still like it because it is part of the Magnaboss team, and when it actually in its Eagle mode it's fine. In its Eagle mode it's absolutely fine, but its bot mode it sucks. Shit, to borrow a Rayism, or a Curranism. Would it be a Rayism or a Curranism? I'm not sure. It sucks shit from Satan's armpit. Oh God, does it ever. But it's part of the Magnaboss team, and in that regard I have to love it, because Magnaboss is the shit. He is so brilliant. Is there a particular Beast Wars figure that you know isn't very good but still love, and why? I can't think of one offhand apart from Silverbolt, to be perfectly honest. If it wasn't very good, I wouldn't like it. That's about the size of it, really. Have you ever played Gears of War, and if so, what did you think of it? I thought it was all mouth and no trousers. I thought it was boring as hell. Shoot enemies, move on to next point, shoot enemies, move on to next point, shoot enemies, fight boss, drama, move on to next bit, shoot enemies, boring as all get out. I didn't like War for Cybertron for the same reason, which is based on the Gears of War engine. I thought it did some wonderful things with Cybertron, and the aesthetics were gorgeous. The Transformers looked great, the voice acting was good, the story was quite good. But, big ass but, the game was boring. Really boring. So, yeah, that's what I thought about that. Oh, this is a fucking good one. Dodecurious. Oh, Dodecurious. I can't pronounce your damn name. Damn you for having a hard to pronounce name. I've always wondered about this, and I'd like your take. Is there a way to objectively quantify the quality of pieces of art, whether they take the form of paintings, music, movies, books, etc.? If so, what metrics could be fairly used? I find this such a difficult question to answer because I'm unsure. I'm unsure, and the positions I hold are contradictory. Because I will say that this piece is objectively better than this piece, or this artist is objectively better than this artist. If you gave me Kate Bush, for example, if you gave me Kate Bush and you measured her against, say, any one of the Pop Factor, X Idol, Britain's Got Talent bits of bullshit, I would say that Kate Bush is objectively the better artist. Objectively the better artist. But could I quantify that? Not really. I'm not sure I could. Simply because her work speaks to me on an emotional, on a various different levels, on an emotional level, on a creative level, on an aesthetic level. It's music that deals with ideas, but it's not necessarily so that the music produced by the plastic fantastic mass-produced boy bands or whatever, it's not necessarily so that that doesn't move certain people in exactly the same way or as profoundly. So is it about the emotional resonance? Is it about the effect that the art has? Or is it about the amount of inspiration and consideration and pure creativity that's gone into it? But how do you measure inspiration? How do you measure inspiration? Is there any means of quantifying inspiration? And would it be a mistake to do so, even if you could? It's I know it's a cop-out, but it's a difficult one. It really is. And I do it with literature. If you measured Dan Brown or Stephanie Myers against Clive Barker, or against I don't know, Edgar Allan Poe, or against Poppy Z. Brite, I would have no hesitation in telling you that Clive Barker is a better author, or that Poppy Z. Brite is a better author than Stephanie Myers or than Dan Brown. But what would I use to quantify that? Would I look at their produce as a creative human being myself and assess the means of creation? Even if I did that, would I be doing it legitimately? I mean, I would be assuming a hell of a lot. I would be assuming that no genuine creative impulse went into the likes of the Da Vinci Code, and that it is just a cynical, by the numbers attempt to cash in on a conspiracy theory bit of bullshit. I would be assuming that. And I would be assuming the lack of inspiration that went into it. I mean, it may be that Dan Brown is a terribly inspired individual but just couldn't communicate effectively what he wanted to. Or that it's so inspired that the full import and beauty of that text is lost upon us mere mortals. Not likely, but it's entirely possible. I don't know is the answer to that one, Dodie, I'm afraid. Cop-out, I know, and it is a cop-out. I'm really sorry, it is a cop-out, but I don't know. I'm going to have to ponder that one.